What is up, everybody? Sean Sheehan back here with another edition of the Sheehan Show on Sherdog.com. And today is a special episode of the show. I want to talk a little bit about Irish MMA and Irish MMA going forward, and who I think will be the next three people from Ireland to get into the UFC, or who I think maybe should be the next three people. Not maybe who will, but who maybe I think. Now, I could have made this easier on myself. I could have said a top 10 or a top 5 and not have people roaring at me. But I decided to put it down to a top 3 because I think these 3 people have an opportunity very quickly to stand out over the next while. In some cases, they have stood out over the last year in some cases. And I have special reasons for all 3 of them, basically. There are lots of other people outside who I think could be very, very close to getting to the UFC, who could be in the UFC in 2022, and I will mention a few of those names as we go along here, but these 3 are the 3 I want to look at. Now, okay, before I get into 3, let me mention a couple of the names. I left out a couple of guys who are already in the UFC or, you know, around tough and stuff, who might get back in, like Rhys McKee, Richie Smullen. I think Richie Smullen has had a great time since he's been kind of away from the black gloves of the UFC and tough. He's won a lot of fights, done some great stuff, and I think he is probably on the verge of getting another shot at the UFC. I think he has improved a lot. I think he's a very good fighter, and he's winning fights. You know, Artem Lobov's kind of taking him under his wing a little bit, and I think he is one to definitely look out for. Rhys McKee, as I mentioned, another one. He got one big win in Cage Warriors. I think he needs a couple more wins in Cage Warriors after getting to the UFC and, you know, losing twice and obviously getting quickly out of the UFC again. If he wins that belt in Cage Warriors, which I think he will get a shot at early next year, I think with Rhys, I think the big thing he needs is fights. I think he needs at least 2 fights in the first half of next year. If that doesn't get him signed to the UFC, get another 2 fights in the second half of next year and make yourself, you know, undeniable. Make the UFC sign you back. So those are a couple of names I would lean on there. Will Fleury is another one who hasn't been in the UFC, who I think he'll probably be my 4th one in this video. He is experienced. He has some big wins. He has beaten some very, very good guys. And in the middleweight division that isn't that strong, I think he could walk in there today and get a lot of wins. Another guy who's really, really improving. Then there are the likes of the guys coming up, the guys down in Cork, John Mitchell and Palahan. Palahan has had a great year in Combatches America. And, you know, John Mitchell, I think, is one of the top prospects in Ireland. I'd love to see both of those guys maybe back in Cage Warriors fighting again next year. I know they've kind of travelled around the world and had a couple of fights, but I'd love to see them get back into Cage Warriors, make a run there, maybe win the belt and go to the UFC. Now, there's probably loads of people who I'm missing. Those are the ones I kind of picked out as my honourable mentions after this 3 list, and I could probably mention a lot more, you know, whether it's someone like maybe Norman Park making another run, or, you know, the likes of Dara Kelly making his debut here coming up next year, or lots of the lads, you know, on Team Rhino who are doing good stuff on the way up, or there's lots and lots and lots of people who I could name, and we will be talking about them over the next while as, you know, they're on their way up. Dean Barry, another one as well, who is, you know, by the time this comes out, maybe we'll have fought again, but he was almost signed to the UFC at one stage. And, you know, obviously a lot of the other fighters are signed to Bellator, like Liam McCourt, James Gallagher and all, so they mightn't be going to the UFC. So, right, let's get into the list. I spent 3 minutes trying to, like, back myself up here. Some people don't give out to me, and I probably will still have people give it out to me. So here are my 3 names. The first one I'm going for is Frans Mlambo. I think Frans Mlambo deserves to be in the UFC for lots of different reasons, really. The first one, I think, is just his ability, the quality of Frans Mlambo. Look, he spent a lot of his early career. I remember Graham, who does the Severe MMA podcast with me, you know, has been around SVG for a long time and knows Frans for a long time. He used to always give out to him for going for guillotines, and he'd end up losing fights that way. You know, he's won a couple of fights by guillotine as well, beat Nathan Grayson by guillotine. But he used to lose some fights in the early part of his career, and that's something I think has changed. And to me, the biggest thing for Frans over the last few years is that newfound ability to just be a better fighter, to make smarter decisions, be a more intelligent fighter with the brilliant technique that he has. The tactics, I think, are brilliant for Frans Mlambo these days. And when he has those right tactics, he's a very, very hard guy to beat. Here's a stat for you. His last 9 fights, Frans Mlambo, he's won 8 of them. The only fight he lost was to Ricky Banderas, in a fight he was dominating in Dublin. I was at that fight, and I honestly couldn't believe how well Frans Mlambo fought. I've been a big fan of Frans Mlambo for a long time. I think he's a really, really good fighter, but the way he handled Ricky Bandejas before he caught a shot. Look, anyone can catch a shot, and it's a great shot from Ricky. Take nothing away from him. Absolutely, I wouldn't. It's not a lucky bunch or anything like that. He caught him and knocked him out. But if you take that one, not take it away, but 9 fights in a row and winning 8 of them, that is brilliant. And Ricky Bandejas is a very good fighter who can catch anyone. Look what he did to James Gallagher and others as well. A win, as I mentioned, Nathan Grayson, Dominic Wooding as well, who only a week ago or so defended his Cage Warriors belt in devastating fashion, winning in 27 seconds or something like that. Frans Mlambo has beaten him. He's win over Corey Tate. He won just, not long before I'm recording this. He just won the Combatches Global Tournament, winning 3 fights in a night. Phenomenal performance from him. The 3 rounds in the end, he almost got caught again, in a submission in the second round of that fight. Fought through it. Some great cornering, especially in the first round of that from John Kavanagh. Will Fleury as well in his corner out there. An intelligent performance again. The way he got through that second round and went out and won the third round. Won 3 fights in one night, just absolutely phenomenal. And he's a guy as well who's gone through it. He fought Stephen Lohman out in Brave a couple of times. Has fought Aidan James, a very, very good fighter. Even from, his first career start, he fought Darren O'Gorman in his debut on Bama, the Duke and Wild versus Brendan Loughnane fight. Darren O'Gorman was 3-0, one of the top guys, one of the top prospects coming through. Frans fought in the IMAS back in 2015 and had a great career as an amateur. Fought Valdrim Lubishtani, who was a big favourite of mine. I think he's very, very good. Beat a lot of guys on the local scene as well. And he started off his career 5-4. Frans did, which is, a shaky start because of all those tough fights. Like fighting Stephen Lohman twice out in Brave is that's not going to be easy. But since then, as I said, the only loss has been to Ricky Bandejas. 9 fights in 3 years in the middle of this pandemic. And I know, 3 of them were on one night, but that's a phenomenal amount of fights to have taken all over. He fought in Bellator, he's the FEN champion at the moment. Looks like, maybe his next fight could be in Combatches against their champion. They kind of, they faced off in the cage right after that fight as well. But I hope that doesn't happen. I hope he doesn't fight for FEN again. I hope he goes straight into UFC because I really think he deserves it. And as well, it's not just about the fighting, it's not just about the ability. He was one of Conor McGregor's main training partners, very good friends with McGregor. Maybe that is something that has been in the past enough to get people signed. Frans Mlambo has the ability, he has the wins, he has the CV, and he has McGregor on his side as well. Hopefully that'll be enough to push him over. So my number 1 pick for Irish fighters to go to the UFC in 2022 is Frans Mlambo. I think it should be. I think he has separated himself from the pack more than anyone else. Got a fight in the summer of 2021. Got the 3 fights, obviously, in the middle part of December here. And I think he's done a great job and has put himself in prime position. So Frans Mlambo is my number 1 pick. Okay, these are not in any specific order. Let me just say that. But the first one I'm picking here. The next 2 are a little bit tentative because for different reasons they mightn't end up in the UFC, but I think both of them should be. And my next one I'm going for Paul Hughes. Obviously, everyone probably listening to this, if you're a fan of Cage Warriors, have listened to this, the Fight Academy Ireland graduate Paul Hughes has been, a really, really good fighter for a long time after making his debut against Adam Gustab in that Bama show, knocked him out in, 92 seconds or something like that. Coming through the Irish scene as well, fighting on Clan Wars. He's fought Richie Smullen, who I mentioned before, fought Dylan Tuke as an amateur as well, and lost the both of those, but bounced back and has not really looked back since. Had really, really bad injuries. From 2017, he debuted in February, and he didn't make his second outing until March 2019. So from 2017 to 2019, he was out for 25 months there. Broken hands, big issues for Paul Hughes, but he's bounced back. He came into Cage Warriors, won 4 fights in a row, beat Aidan Stephen, who is that the same Aidan Stephen that Frans fought? No, it's Aidan James, sorry. They're very close. Those people with 2 first names I always get mixed up, but Aidan Stephen, a very good fighter as well, 7-2, and then he fought Jordan Vucinic, who he's going to be fighting again coming up here in January, February, March of next year. And that's why I say, this is a tentative one, because he wins that fight, he could be in the UFC. He loses that fight, maybe he's not. But we'll get to that maybe again in a second. So he lost that fight to Vucinic. Contentious, very contentious split decision. I think I scored it for Vucinic at the time, but it's one of those ones where if you scored it for Vucinic, you're right. If you scored it for Hughes, you're right. It wasn't a robbery either way. It was a very, very close decision, a very, very close fight, but one that you feel Paul Hughes could learn from, you know? One that you feel that a little bit of additional information, fight IQ, a little bit of additional fights under his belt, and that's a mistake he won't make again. Fought twice since that. James Hinden, good win. I would hope for a little bit better. Like Paul Hughes is one of these guys, right? I have really, really, really high expectations for him, and when he doesn't meet those expectations, I'm a little bit disappointed. Like, someone else could fight the exact same fight as Paul Hughes, and I'd say, what a phenomenal fight, what a performance, they're absolutely brilliant. But I think so much of Paul Hughes that even good performances for him, I expect better. You know, so he's one of those fighters. That's how much I think of Paul Hughes. Came out in his last fight in October, and a very, very close. It was a majority decision win, over Morgan Charrier. Obviously, maybe the poster boy at the moment for Cage Warriors, because Paddy Pimblett's gone, Ian Gary's gone, and he is the guy they're looking to go to France with, for a big show, and maybe the winner of the upcoming featherweight bout between Vucinic and Hughes will fight him. Now, in that fight as well, he won. Paul Hughes, beating Charrier, won the interim featherweight belt. Vucinic is the featherweight champion after beating Charrier as well, and so this will be the interim meeting the proper champion to put those two belts together. What's that word? I can't think of the word. You know, when you put the two belts together, what is it? Amalgamate. I don't know. I can't remember the word. But that's a huge fight. If Hughes wins that, what is he at the moment? He is, I'm just looking, 8-1, moves to 9-1. You know, has all those Cage Warriors fights. If he beats Vucinic, okay, maybe it'll end up in a trilogy because Vucinic beat him once before. But he will have beaten Charrier and Vucinic 2 fights in a row with Tobias Harila, who lost 2 fights ago to William Gomis. I think those are the best featherweights in Cage Warriors at the moment. But you take Harila out, because he just lost. It'd be very hard to deny Hughes a seat at the table in the UFC when he's just beaten Charrier and Vucinic, 2 of the top 3 with him in that division. That would be a phenomenal run. That'd be a phenomenal 2-fight run in a row, and should vault him right to the level of the UFC. And he's already calling it. This fight isn't for another 3-ish months, and he's already calling for that shot. He's already saying, calling himself undefeated and everything like that. I'm not the biggest fan of that, to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of saying, I was robbed in that fight. He wasn't robbed in the fight. It was a very, very close fight, very, very close judging fight, and there's things to learn from that fight. And if he doesn't learn things from that, Vucinic is a very good fighter, and he'll beat him again. I guarantee you that. If he does learn things from it, has improved, I can see him winning. I think he has the beating of Vucinic, but Vucinic, one of the most underrated guys in Europe. I called the other day on Twitter, I called Frans Mlambo the most underrated guy in Europe. I think Vucinic is right up there with him. I think he's a really, really, really good fighter. I have a lot of time for him, and he will not make it easy on Paul Hughes. So that's a fight everyone needs to be tuning in for. If Paul Hughes wins it, he's my pick to go to the UFC next. But if he doesn't, it'll be another while. It might be this time next year before he gets there again. He'll need to go on another run to get back into that conversation again. But yeah, Paul Hughes is my second one. I believe in his talent. Paul Hughes is one of those guys where I think at some stage he's going to make it at some stage. Whether it's now or whether it's a year's time or whether it's 18 months' time, I think he is too much of a high quality fighter not to make it to the UFC, not to make it to the big show. I think there needs to be little bits of improvements in fight IQ, little bits of improvements in tactics. Obviously his technique is improving all the time. It's very good anyway, but that'll continue to improve. But once that gets there, I think Paul Hughes, he could be the next guy to make it there, and the next guy to maybe be a star. If he stays with Cage Warriors for another time, I think they need to push him as one of those guys as well. I don't think he has like maybe the charisma or the stardom of an Ian Gary or a Paddy Pimblett in that way where people kind of gravitate to him. But if he keeps winning, that'll change very quickly because he talks in that manner, and I don't think he's really got people to believe him yet necessarily, but I don't believe in the talk. I believe in the actions, and I believe in what he does in the cage, and he's a very, very good fighter and someone we need to be looking out for in the next year. So those are my first two. I think will be in the UFC in the next year, or could be in the UFC. The third person I'm going for, bit of left field there, because this is a person who has fought 5 times, all in Bellator, and it's Danni Nealon. And the reason I think she will be in the UFC, and I cheekily the last time at the Bellator press conference in Dublin asked her if she wanted to get to the UFC in front of all the Bellator crew and all. But my reason for that is they don't have a 115-pound division in Bellator. They just get her fights, and they've gotten her some good fights. So all credit to Bellator, taking nothing away from them. And if they did have a 115-pound division, I wouldn't be saying this. I'd respect Bellator. I'd respect their signing of Danni, and I'd respect her as well in that division, maybe going for a belt or whatever it is. But she's called out Valerie Loreda. She's looking for that fight. She's willing to go up to 125 pounds to fight her. And, I'd probably fancy her to win that fight. I think she's a very, very good fighter. Good all around. Her last performance was absolutely phenomenal. Ended up getting the finish led on after she was disappointed with herself. She said in the press conference afterwards that she went to a decision in her previous fight where she stepped out of Bellator, and I said sorry earlier on, she had all her fights in Bellator. She hasn't. She actually had one outside of Bellator, but Bellator allowed her to go out. She went over to Germany, fought Katarina Delidza, a German in Germany who's 5-1, a pretty good record, with Danny Nealon only having 3 fights before that. And she went in and she beat her by unanimous decision. Was still a bit disappointed with that, and that shows you what level she is at. She won her 3 fights obviously before that as well, so undefeated. The 115-pound division in the UFC is their strongest division, but every division needs to be stronger. And I think someone like Danny Nealon is someone who will make that division stronger. This is the one I could see. Maybe she won't be signed in January, February, March. But if she gets a fight early in Bellator, gets another fight in the summer, maybe gets another fight towards the end of the year, then maybe I could see her going to the UFC. She has said that she wants, exactly what I said there, basically, in terms of more fights, more experience, more improvements. And I think they will come. And it's just a pity that Bellator don't have that division at the moment. I think going up to 125 pounds, maybe for one fight, it'd be fine. But, as a long-term plan, I don't think it's the best plan in the world, because I don't think she's the biggest. She's perfect for 115. I don't know, maybe she could make 105 even if that division was around somewhere. But I think, if she comes to maybe the end of her Bellator contract, if there's an offer comes in from the UFC or something like that for someone like Danny, who can't be tied to Bellator in terms of the division because they don't have that division, I think she needs to move on to somewhere like the UFC at some stage. Now, it's great at the moment because she's learning her trade in Bellator, probably getting paid better than she would be in smaller organizations where she's still fighting good people, because they're all trying to rise and get that shot at the big show. So it's a great way to do it. If everyone could do this, get 5 or 6 fights in Bellator and then go to the UFC, it'd be fantastic. But maybe she will be able to do it now. That's for someone smarter than me to see how you could kind of plow that furrow even to get from Bellator to the UFC. But I think it might be possible. I think she has the quality. I think she has the ability. And over the next few years, I think she will rise and rise and rise. A very hard worker, very smart, head on her shoulders. And it's a great time for women's MMA in Ireland as well. Sinead Kavanagh, unfortunately, she lost to Chris Cyborg, but just to fight Chris Cyborg is phenomenal. Leah McCourt is a ranked fighter at the moment. Shauna Bannon just had her last amateur fight. We've Dee Begley, Danny herself. I'm probably missing someone now, from Aisling Daly back in the day to Catherine Costigan. There's a fantastic array of women competing in MMA in Ireland at the moment, and more to come, hopefully. But Danny, maybe I was going to say she's leading the way. You'd have to give it to Sinead after this year. Okay, she lost. You'd have to give it to Leah as well. I think they're all on a par. I remember last year when we were doing our awards over in Severe in May, I think every single one of them got a vote. So it's, and last year in 2020, not in 2021, but in 2020, all 3 of those women all went undefeated in that year. So the quality, pushing each other, really, really good fighters, and I'm looking forward to see where all of them go. But Danny Nealon for me, with obviously the other Leah McCourt and Sinead Kavanagh still in that division with Cyborg, and hopefully building their way for Sinead back up and for Leah up to that position. So they're kind of taken care of there. But I think I think Danny could be one, and she could be one to sign for the UFC over the next year. So. Yeah, those are my 3 fighters. Apologies to all the fighters who are probably going to roar at me. The likes of Will Fleury, Richie Smullen, Rhys McKee, they'll probably all give out to me. John Mitchell, Palahan. I'm probably forgetting loads and loads and loads more. But lucky, there's lots of people covering MMA in Ireland as well, and in the local shows and the big shows as well. And we have, it's been it's been a tough year for Irish MMA in some ways. Obviously lost the 2 title fights in a row. James Gallagher lost. Conor McGregor broke his leg and lost as well. But it's been a good year with kind of the amateur scene coming back a little bit as well, and lots of good wins and lots of up and comers looking good. So I think 2022 will be a good year for Irish MMA, and I would predict that we will see more Irish fighters in the UFC next year, starting with these 3. All right, my name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.